for the Netherlands Olympic team. He's a convicted child rapist and was placed on the sex offenders registry here in the UK for life back in 2016. This guy had to be extradited to the country. He had to be extradited from the Netherlands to the UK to face justice, right? When he was 19, he raped a 12-year-old girl in Milton Keynes. He groomed her on Facebook, this guy. He gave her alcohol and then he raped her at her home several times. This is a bad person. This is a bad dude, right? About as bad as it gets, really. Now, he eventually returned to the Netherlands and he's an athlete. He must be pretty useful to be on the Dutch Olympic team, to be sent to Paris for the games. And again, I knew nothing about this. And I was on Twitter this morning and I came across Emma Jane Taylor. Now, she's an incredibly impressive woman. She was sexually abused in childhood, and her experience has led to her setting up campaigns, including one called Not My Shame, to raise awareness around child sexual abuse. She's also an author, a personal development coach and a podcast host, and she's well known and well versed on these matters. Let's welcome Emma Jane Taylor to the programme. Emma Jane, lovely to chat with you. Welcome.
Hi Richie, good to chat to you too. Thank you for having me on this show today.
Do you know what I was thinking today when I saw you? You did a very eloquent, I wouldn't even call it rant, I would say a very eloquent appeal to the Dutch authorities to say, what in the name of God is going on? Why would you want somebody like that in your team? And I was thinking, it's untenable that somebody would go to represent Great Britain or England or represent the Republic of Ireland, somebody who'd committed such an unspeakable crime against a 12-year-old child. Why do we think it is that the Dutch are persevering with this guy? And has anybody answered or given you any response at all since you started saying, look, you shouldn't bring this guy to the Olympics? Have you heard back from anybody?
No, I have heard nothing. And it's interesting you say, obviously if this happened in the UK or anywhere else in the world, we hope this wouldn't be the case. But are we so sure? The fact that we're even having this conversation today in the 21st century at the 2024 Paris Olympics, that a convicted child rapist will be representing his country is not something you'd ever have imagined to have been a conversation. So I'd like to think this wouldn't happen in the UK or around the world, but it for me, it quite possibly could. So many people talk about, normalizing paedophilia, and I think, I just can't believe that's true. But you hear this story and you think, my goodness, what are we facing here in the UK? What are we facing here around the world? None of this is going to protect children. None of this is going to help the generations to follow if we allow Steven van der Velde to take part in the Olympics 2024. It is, like you say, it's untenable. We cannot have this guy representing his country. It greenlights lots of difficult conversation. It doesn't protect children, and it's not in any way, shape or form the right thing for any country to be doing.
The judge in the case felt in the sentencing that it was so heinous that he should sign the sex offenders register for life.
Yes.
And that makes me wonder, Emma Jane, this must have been known when he was selected to play. Somebody must have said, yes, listen, coach, do you know this guy is on the UK sex offenders register for life? And me being a human being, you being a human being, I would be inclined to say, well, let's forget him then. But they haven't.
Well, there must be so many other players, right? So much more talent around, and they must be looking at this thinking, hold on a minute, you've chosen a rapist over someone who is as talented and if not more. Why is that? Someone said to me, he must have powerful friends, and you think, God, maybe he does, and your eyes are opening again to other conversations. Now, following his early release, he was reported to have said, I do want to correct all the nonsense that has been written about me when I was locked up. I didn't read any of it on purpose, but I understand that it was quite bad. I've been branded a sex monster, a paedophile. That I am really not. Anyone can have their opinion, but it is only fair if they know my side of the story. Well, I have to stop Steven van der Velde there and say, You raped a child, Stephen. It is not for you to tell us otherwise of your character. We've seen that. You've pleaded guilty. You've pleaded guilty on 3 counts. You've been sent to prison and you've done a sentence. It's too short a sentence, but that's another story. There's no other side of that story, Richie.
Yeah.
He is guilty as seen. I don't think it's fair for him to take another story forward on this. The media is quite quiet on this, don't you think? It's quite quiet. You've contacted me. I've had a few other people sort of circling around. Charlie Lawson, also known as Jim McDonald in Corrie, who's a champion for all of my work. He's waded in this, and a few others have started to share stories and have picked up. It's gone on to TikTok, and that seems to be sort of my story has gone on to TikTok about this and Twitter, and it's picking up momentum now. And for me, it's shocking. Of course, I see this all the time, but no one knows about it, and everyone's sort of just saying, really the same thing. There wasn't any more talented players that weren't convicted child rapists. Why did you choose this person? What are you trying to prove? Now, someone was talking about rehabilitation earlier. Well, that's not in front of the world at the Olympics. This isn't where he needs to be. This isn't the privilege he needs. And like I said earlier, this green lights very difficult conversations for the world if Van der Velde is allowed to play this year in the Olympics.
I'd love to know if the Parisian authorities know that this guy is a registered sex offender. And that
you think that he would be. You think that they would know, right? Because my question now is, where's the screening? Where is the screening of every participant in the Olympic Games? Now, I've been looking at all their website and their ethics and their mission and everything that they've got on their website, and I can't see anything there that says that they will allow murderers, child rapists into the Games. Now, these things need to be seriously looked at, right? Because, like I said,
there's a safeguarding issue. There
will be a safeguarding issue. And you've got children going to be on site. You have got young performers, players in site. Well, and also, if I was in that team now, I would step out. I'd be like, I will not play with a child rapist. But I come from a world where I see the difficulties of this and the realities of this. This strips childhood. And, if we go to the victim for a second, what about her? She must be going through hell, Richie. This girl has had her life taken by Van der Velde. Now, he's been able to go on and at the moment has a privileged seat at this year's Olympic. I don't think he should have that. That's why we're here having this conversation. But what about her? Maybe she was a keen sports person. Maybe she would love to have gone to the Olympics or dreamt about doing something similar in her life. But because of the trauma that he has left in his wake, she's likely to never do that because she will be going through all sorts of difficulties just trying to exist in her life. And while she's trying to exist, he wants the world to feel sorry for him because he raped a child. No, Van der Velde, that just doesn't work.
The only thing we know about the young woman is that she's really struggled with it. According to Wikipedia, she's self-harmed and she's even overdosed. And you answered my next question, which was, what do we do about convicted sex offenders? Now, I've asked this before of my listeners, and nobody seems to have the answer. It is the most heinous of crimes. It's the one that's never, ever forgiven. Somebody could commit manslaughter, and you might be working in a company, Emma Jane, and I might be working in a company. We might learn that Martin over there, 10 years ago, he did 6 years for manslaughter, and we can kind of get on with that. But you say Martin did a stretch in Belmarsh because he raped a child. We're either going to leave or Martin leaves. We're not going to put up with it. And I was going to say, if he'd have been contrite about it in any way, but he wasn't. He's arrogant about it, and he's saying the whole story is not out there. What do we do with convicted child sex offenders? What do we do with them after they've served their sentence?
I will be straight down the line on what I think we should do, but I think that might get us removed from air as well.
No, it won't. This is a free speech.
Do you know what, Richie?
Say what you want.
He got caught. Like so many other child rapists, they got caught if he hadn't have got caught, he would have carried on with his career without anyone knowing. And I say that because I know a lot of people who've carried on their career without anyone knowing, because the victim is too terrified to speak up. And so they carry on. They shouldn't be able to carry on. Certainly, one thing, you have no more privileges. You have no opportunity to be selected into the most prestigious sports event of the world. You certainly don't have huge opportunities that you had previously because you raped a child. In my opinion, he should still be in prison. He got 4 years, he served 1. And that is no reflection on the life that he took. He should be in prison for life for what he did. And he isn't. He's out. So therefore, go gracefully out and build your life, do something for the better. Now, I do believe there needs to be more research into the other side of that conversation, but that's not where I sit. However, maybe he could use his lessons and what he has done to further research a very difficult conversation, to help people understand why people behave in that way. That's not for someone like me. I'm here as a campaigner against child abuse. I'm here as a campaigner to support survivors, but I do realize on the other side of that coin there are difficult conversations that need to be had to better understand and research. Maybe he could do that, but no, he wants to just push it aside and make himself up, put himself into the glory of the Olympics to get a gold. That definitely shouldn't be happening. There is no place for him in the Olympics doing that. So no, he needs to be removed from society in that way and improve his life through the better with helping other people who might be going through similar stories, maybe help them and research so that we can better understand, so we can gain research and knowledge to protect children. Him coming out saying that he's done nothing wrong gives us no knowledge. He has done something wrong. He's raped a child, and we need to understand why. He's got no empathy, right? It's quite psychopathic behavior, and those are the behaviors that we need to better understand for this conversation. So I have no sympathy for him.
I wouldn't expect you to have.
I don't believe he has a place in society. We need to focus on what we can do to get him removed, support this girl, support other survivors, protect children. And this isn't protecting children, Richie.
No, it isn't. You're listening to Emma Jane Taylor. Emma Jane is a survivor of child abuse. Her experiences have led her to do great work setting up campaigns around awareness of child sexual abuse. She's an author, personal development coach and podcast host. You'll find her on Twitter. You'll find her online. I'll put all the links after the live show on the podcast notes. This is an extraordinary story. I knew nothing about it until I saw your messages today. Steven van de Velde is going to play volleyball for the Dutch in the Olympics. He raped a 12-year-old girl he met on Facebook. He groomed her, he plied her with alcohol, and he destroyed her life. There's no two ways about it. The guy headed off back to the Netherlands. He was dragged back. He was convicted, given a 4-year sentence. I reckon this will start something, you know that. I reckon you'll be inundated. By this, I don't mean you being here, but I mean by nature of you putting the stuff on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and elsewhere today, this will start a big conversation. Let me ask you this. Around this guy, I think there'll be movement on this. I think from the Dutch, I think there will be movement. Why? Look, listen, from the outside looking in, it appears to me like child sexual abuse there's a pandemic of it or an epidemic of it. Is there? And if so, why in this day and age, when people are supposedly so much more aware, when children and when parents and guardians are so much more aware of the dangers, why is there a pandemic of child abuse?
I think it's always been there, Richie. I think we're talking about it more and more. We're in the 21st century where people have a voice. The Me Too movement absolutely gave lots of people the opportunity to speak up and out about their stories. As you know, as you've mentioned already, I have a campaign called Not My Shame, where survivors can be supported on this conversation. And through doing that, through me speaking out, through me campaigning, people are finding more confidence to speak out. We are able to voice conversations that we weren't able to do before, probably because social media is bigger and wider now. And also you can do it anonymously, and it gives people confidence. We know so much more. We're also faced with the reality that child sexual abuse and all this abuse of children is often hidden in plain sight. I have my campaign, I also have my charity, Project 9010, and we're focused on the 9010 statistic, and that is 90% of children being abused are being abused by people that they know, yet we still educate 10%, which is stranger danger. So we're trying to change that around. So I think the pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, it's always been there. But we're seeing it more now because there's more people like myself and other campaigners speaking out, giving other people the confidence to do so. And actually by saying, you know, it's not about being believed, it's about understanding this happens, what we need to do, and take that, extract that information to protect children. It's been there, we're getting braver, we're in, you know, when my story was in the 1980s, 1990s, we didn't talk about it then. We just didn't talk about it. No one wanted to talk about it. So you just shut the door and hoped it all went away. And actually very much there are still an age of people who just want to shut the door and hope it goes away. But I don't, because actually that doesn't protect children, and I'm all for protecting children and encouraging people to speak up. So I think the digital world has really opened up the possibilities for people to talk, as has the Me Too movement, and my own movement in the last year, Not My Shame, has really helped people to see actually it is not my shame. I did nothing wrong. I was just a child. The shame lands on the perpetrators. The shame is on the child rapist. Steven van der Velde is trying to turn this back and take the shame away for him, but we've got to throw it back at him. He raped a child. It's his shame. She might not want to speak out right now, and I totally, absolutely respect that. This is just, it's a viper nest for her at the moment, isn't it? And we don't want her to come in and get any more stressed or triggered or traumatized by this. But yeah, I think, you know, the online world, Me Too and Not My Shame, has really encouraged people to speak up.
That's done it. Let me read a few comments, unsurprisingly. Lots of them coming into the programme. There is an app. It's on the App Store. It's on Google Play. You can message the studio directly. The wonders of technology. Nigel is in County Down. And he says, Richie, I've looked it up. When he was sentenced, Van de Velde, Francis Sheridan, presiding judge, said, you were a potential Olympian. You had the possibility of a stellar future representing the Netherlands. I wonder what Judge Francis Sheridan makes of the fact that he is at the Olympics and will be at the Olympics next week. David says, I would castrate them. I don't know, David. Chemical castration doesn't work, allegedly. We'll get some thoughts from Emma Jane in a moment. Mike says, has Emma Jane heard about the US gymnast abuse scandal? The biggest abuse scandal in the US went on for 2 decades. No ban, says Mike. Is that right? Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's. Do you know what? There's been lots of stories circulating over the years. The gymnastics story, one of them, and there was a basketball player recently, and these paedophiles, rapists, they continue their life, and behind them is just a domino effect of fallen lives of victims, and that's what we're seeing, right? And I'm saying, no, let's bring those dominoes back up. Let's hear those dominoes speak. Let's hear those voices so that we can protect children. It's interesting talking about the judge. Sentencing, the judge presiding over the case was quoted as having said, your hopes of representing your country as an Olympic athlete now lie as a shattered dream. You have lost a stellar sports career and have been branded a rapist. Plainly, this is a career end for him. Quote, well, clearly not. Yeah, clearly not, because whoever Van der Velde knows and whoever has signed him in and signed him off to be part of this team doesn't believe that this is a serious enough offence for him not to represent his country. Well, I can't imagine what the Dutch must be feeling about this. The children who've been raped, the survivors as adults struggling, they're going to be traumatised by all of this. But those child rapists, seen or unseen, will be rubbing their hands, right? This is a green light for them to be able to further their life because of what they've done. And that is a big, big problem, and something that I am very concerned about with this conversation.
You know, the opening ceremony usually sees the teams from every country all of the athletes from the different sports parading or doing a lap of the Olympic Stadium during the opening ceremony. I mean, around half of the Dutch Olympic team across all sports will be women. You wonder what they would think to be walking alongside the guy under the same banner, under the same flag, and you wonder how many of the women competing for the Netherlands would even know about this. This is the thing, because I can't believe, Emma Jane, that this is widely known amongst the female athletes, because there'd be all sorts of threats now, I would imagine, of like, I'm not travelling.
It's really interesting you say that, because obviously I'd heard this story about a week or so ago, and I started circulating it and putting it out there, and no one was really talking about it, and I was looking online and I was like, well, there's no media, there seems to be a complete blackout on this, and then I've circulated it a bit more, I've put some videos together and I've put them out, and then suddenly the last 48 hours the traction has gone off the scale. TikTok and Twitter and people jumping in just shocked because they weren't aware from this, and now they're sharing it and they're sharing it and they're sharing it, and it's reaching corners of the world that we need to reach, because the whole world needs to know about this. We talk about hidden in plain sight, right? We talk about paedophiles and child rapists, they're hidden in plain sight. Well, this is not even hidden. This is in plain sight. Now, that person, Van der Velde, will be playing with his team at the Olympics. Actually, I digress for a second. I had a look at the schedules for the Olympics, and all of the games are listed for the volleyballs and the beach volleyballs, apart from the Dutch games. So they clearly are monitoring the events that they are doing. It's not a coincidence, I'm sure. But yeah, so this cannot happen. It cannot continue. He cannot be in that games. Fancy, I mean, just makes me, I'm so angry to think that people will be cheering his team winning and he will be accepting that accolade. And that is a big, big issue. He cannot be seen in that way.
I don't know, Emma Jane. I don't know, because I think the Dutch national press will pick up the story, because as you said, it's really gathered pace now since you started talking about it. While you've been chatting with me, you're listening to Emma Jane Taylor. Let me remind you, Emma Jane is online, emmajanetaylor.com. You'll find all the links on there, emmajanetaylor.com. This surprises me. It shouldn't really, because I lived in Spain for a number of years, and when I lived in Spain in the mid-2000s, the age of consent was 13 in Spain. It was. Would you believe, well, of course you know this, I didn't know it until I looked up, in 7 countries, Austria, Bulgaria, Estonia, Germany, Hungary, Italy and Portugal, the age of consent today is 14. I know. Yeah. That's what do you make of that? It varies
from 11 years old, and I think some, and I'd have to just get back up on that, but I think it's some are even younger than 11. But 11 years old, that is just a green light for raping a child. In Nigeria, as an example, they are 11 years old. What are we thinking? I mean, this needs to be really looked at. I personally believe the age of consent should be higher than 16. I think we should take it up to 18. But
is it 16 here? Sorry to interrupt you. Is it 16 here in the UK?
16 in the UK, yeah. Right, we shouldn't be allowing children to be taken advantage of, because they are, especially 11. I mean, 11 years old. Can you imagine? I mean,
no.
A lot of children haven't even started puberty. They haven't even, their brains haven't developed. They aren't understanding. They're crossing over from being primary school to senior school, and that's a changing. And then you're putting consent at 11 for these children to have sex, I mean, and to be seen as having sex. No, it's rape. It's child rape, and that's a wider, bigger conversation, and we probably don't have time for that today. But
no, but I did. Sorry to interrupt. I was honest with you when I said, because you mentioned other callers. We will, at your convenience, we will broaden it out, and we'll set a date for that if you like. So put that one. Can I read a few comments, because you've fired up the imagination of our listeners, and you've also Some of them are very emotional. This one is from an anonymous listener. Richie, I'm male, age 74. I was raped by scoutmasters as a child, and I still carry a lot of anger despite loads of therapy and alternative healing. I have massive problems. And then it must be he, says with the LGBT, etc. bullshit. Now, I get what he's saying there. He's not anti-gay or anti-lesbian. But there is a feeling among some of our listeners that there is, around gender politics and gender identity, that this is an area that's predatory when it comes to children, that it's a problem for children. I don't know your thoughts on that, Emma, or Emma Jane, if you want to get into it, because it's a big subject as well.
It's a big subject, but I think we have to focus back on children.
Yeah.
Children. And also, child abusers are hidden in plain sight. Police, doctors, school teachers, pretty much every profession across the world. We cannot pigeonhole this into one corner of society. We have to look at the greater picture. And the greater picture is child sex offenders, rapists, paedophiles, whatever you want to call them, they are hidden in plain sight across all sorts of religions, beliefs, cultures, sexuality, and you have to look at the whole thing. You start pigeonholing one corner of society, you're going to forget about the others. Fair and enough. Children will get hurt.
You're bang on. It's a very good point you've made there. And you mentioned earlier, and it is true, it's borne out statistically, is that in 9 out of 10 cases, the victim, the child, knows the abuser. Here's a couple more messages. Ingrid says, I would tattoo. There's a lot of vengeance in some of these messages, and I totally understand this because I know that victims are messaging in. I know they are. Ingrid says, I would tattoo all visible areas of their bodies with clear lettering reading pedo. Give them 20 quid for a taxi, kick them out for the general public to deal with. There's no doubt about it, Emma Jane, that when it comes to this crime, there's no forgiveness. People do, and I kind of understand it. And I would say this guy, if he had any contrition, Stephen van de Velde, would retire from public life and do something in the private sector, keep his head down and stay away from children. And there's a lot 100%. Of that coming through. Yeah.
100%. And the fact that he isn't, and he's got no remorse or no empathy for the child that he's raped. He's made it about him. I don't have any time for his boo-hoo story. I just don't. He raped a child. He has to suffer those consequences and have privileges removed. And we can focus on that victim. We can focus on children. He can go off and be supported anywhere he likes. And that's the research we can extract to help us with the work that we are doing to protect children. But putting him on a pedestal at the Olympics to receive an accolade and quite possibly a gold medal. Now that makes me literally want to be sick. The thought of that. And actually your listener was talking about tattooing P on the foreheads. I've heard that 1,000 times. It's not a bad idea. Something has to change, right? We can't keep living like this. And of course we know Van der Velde is a convicted child rapist. Maybe there's lots of people in the Olympics who've never been found, not been convicted. And that's why this is a really serious conversation today.
No doubt it is. In the couple of minutes we have left, Gail says it sounds like he has no remorse whatsoever. He should definitely be removed from the team. It should be made public too why he's been taken off the team. That's from Gail. Good evening to John. This is John Fahy. John says, Emma Jane is spot on with her views on child abuse. Raping a child is an unforgivable crime. If guilt could be proved beyond a doubt, it would warrant the most severe punishment allowed under law. As for being allowed to play international sports, shocking, says John. And just before you come back in on that, Emma Jane, let's be honest. So while Judge Sheridan said to the guy, oh, you've ruined, you're not going to play sports and all that, he handed down a 4-year sentence. Was a 4-year sentence appropriate for raping a 12-year-old girl? I'm thinking that's a little bit getting off lightly.
4 years doesn't even scratch the surface of what he did. She will be going through absolute torture as she's developed over the years that have followed. 4 years does not reflect a life that has been taken through rape. The violation, the trauma, the despicable abuse of child abuse should not be handed down 4-year sentences. I mean, it's almost embarrassing. I don't even want to talk about it when I talk about it online, because I'm like, it's another conversation on its own. This is a huge conversation.
And he wouldn't have done 4, so he wouldn't, Emma Jane. He wouldn't have done 4. He would have done 2, probably 2.5 at best.
Well, he only actually did 1. He did 1, and then
they
was
sent him
released.
back to Yeah.
But but then you have to look at that conversation and who's who's signing these off, who's on these committees, who's on the ethical committees at the Olympics, who are all these people thinking that this is okay. I'd love to meet them. I'd love to meet them and share with them the reality of child abuse. I think going and I don't want to go too heavy because I know we're sort of running out of time, but the political side of this, right? Let's start with children, because if you can start with children and you can help nurture children will flourish into young adults who then become flourishing citizens of our world. If you cannot understand the seriousness of child abuse and what it takes from you, what it removes from your young life, and those children who aren't being nurtured and who aren't flourishing, who aren't able to maybe go on to do the Olympics or to do the job they wanted in wherever, then you have a broken society. And we have a broken society because of so many survivors not out living the life that they should have done because it was taken by people like Velde.
I'm going to take the audio of this tomorrow and send it to various Dutch newspapers and radio stations. Yeah, and say to them, look, I'm not on a personal witch hunt to destroy this guy. I'm not. And I know I don't think you want to destroy the man either. I think you're saying quite rightly, he doesn't have a place at this Olympic Games. He shouldn't be doing it. Let's see what sort of response we get. I'm pretty sure something is going to come out of it, Emma Jane. I have no doubt about it. I have one final question for you. You have been listening to Emma Jane Taylor. Her website is emmajanetaylor.com. Emma Jane is a survivor. She has her own very, very profound and powerful story to tell. She set up many campaigns, including Not My Shame, to raise awareness of the subject. She's an author, personal development coach and a podcast host. In 90 seconds, if you had one bit of advice to give to the parents of a child in 2024 that might make them think about protecting their kid, what would you say to them? What would your advice be?
Know what they're doing, know where they are, talk to them about who they're talking to. Don't be afraid to support them if they're telling you something difficult. Don't walk away from them if they are telling you something difficult. Be there for them, be present, be listening. And remember, if they have gone through anything that has been of this nature, there are so many people that you can turn to for support, because you will need it as a parent or as a guardian for your child. But make sure that child feels they are heard, they are supported, and encourage conversations so that no secrets are dark secrets.
Well said, Emma Jane. You know what? It's 9 days to the Olympics or thereabouts. 9 days is a long time in politics and in news. So we'll watch your space to see what happens with the Dutch Olympic Committee. Thanks for your time today, and all the very best. I'm sure we'll talk again real soon, but the very best with your work and your campaigning. Thanks, Emma Jane.
Thanks, Richie.
Real pleasure. Emma